We are here as members of the Elizabeth City chapter of the Links Incorporated Health and Human Services Facet. I am Dr. Gloria Felix, and I am accompanied by my sister, Dr. Freda McBride, who is an educator and is also a layperson. I am a physician. For your listeners, Clay, February is Heart Healthy Month. So I'd like to begin by talking about some very basic facts. Heart disease is the number one cause of death for both men and women in the United States. It is an equal opportunity killer that claims approximately 1 million lives annually. Clay, this information is kind of staggering, but about every 34 seconds, someone in the United States has a heart attack, and about every 60 seconds, someone dies in the United States from a heart attack, according to the American Heart Foundation. However, there is good news. Heart disease is one of the most preventable diseases. You know, there's an old adage that says, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
And I'm glad you brought that up. And Dr. Felix, let's talk a little bit more about how can you prevent heart disease?
Well, I'm glad you asked that. That's great. It's not easy, but it's something that's doable. The best way that you can prevent heart disease is by making heart-healthy choices. Know your health history and the risk factors for heart disease. Have regular medical checkups, and work with your physician to manage your health. And don't keep any information from your physician.
Yeah, that's really good information. Your physician should be one of your best friends, especially when it comes to health. And Dr. Felix, how can you reduce your risk of heart disease?
Well, Clay, that's a great question. I'd like to start that off with, number one, choose a heart-healthy lifestyle. I know I keep saying heart healthy, but let's break it down. Engage in regular, moderate aerobic exercise for at least 30 minutes, 5 days a week. I know people have heard that over and over. Or a more vigorous workout of at least 20 minutes, 3 times a week. That's a lot easier said than done. And you know, in January, just like this January, during New Year's, we all make resolutions. We go through this the first of the year, every year, with all the new gym memberships and TV commercials about losing 40 pounds with this particular product or that particular product. And then we join the gym and we go in there and we can't get to the aerobic machines because the line is just so long and you're waiting to try to get on the machine. And then you go in again about February or March and you can get in the machine you want.
Yes.
So that's the dilemma that we find ourselves in. Okay, so I want to get back to how you can reduce the risk for heart disease. It is important to adopt a diet that's low in salt, saturated in trans fats, and one that is high in unsaturated fats like fish and avocado, just to name a few. It's also very important to maintain a normal body weight, and your doctor can help you with this, as well as you taking an active role in your weight and how much you eat and how much you exercise. And I think there are height and weight charts that you can go by to find out where you fit into that particular schema. Avoid smoking and recreational drug use like cocaine, alcohol, and methamphetamine. And I think we know we have famous singers and actors who have succumbed to just those types of things with cocaine and methamphetamine, and how they race the heart. And you don't, if you don't know what risks you have, and then you racing your heart by doing some recreational drugs, then you can put yourself in trouble. So those are one. Limit alcoholic beverage to about 1/2 to 1 drink per day. It's very important, Clay, for each individual to know and review their risk factors.
Yeah. While we have a little bit of time, I wanted to kind of delve more into the saturated trans fats and unsaturated fats and just give the listeners a better understanding of what each of those are? Because I think people have heard of it, but when they're looking at the labels of different foods, they may not know what those potato chips have in them, or I think it'll just help them out a little bit. So if you can kind of give them some examples of what that is.
Okay, I think that I'm trying to remember who the rapper was who lost weight, and he said that if you go in a grocery store and you go all the way around the grocery store, you find all the healthy stuff that's on the outer perimeter of the grocery store. And everything in the middle of the grocery store is where all the bad fats are.
I agree, yeah.
So that is one thing. Potato chips, cookies. Getting your audience to learn to read, because the FDA has us putting labels.
Yeah.
They have to put labels on there. And so it'll say on there how much trans fat. So the important thing is reading.
Got it.
It's a whole list of things. I couldn't go into the whole list of things today. But the most important thing is reading.
Yeah, okay.
What's in it.
Definitely.
So if you got a bag of chips or a bag of cookies, then you need to turn it on that other side and see what the calories are and what's in it.
Yeah.
And it'll tell you on there how much trans fat is used and, unsaturated. It's all written on there because our laws say that we have to put it on there.
And listeners, when you look at that, you might put it back down. So this is very important to get informed and see what's on that label. And while we're on this subject, I've always heard about peanuts being good fat. I don't really understand it. So is that the true? Is that a myth? Because I'll eat peanuts, but I'll see the fat content looks pretty high, but they say that's not bad fat. So I'm a little confused by that.
And again, you have to read the label on the back of it and see, because some peanuts some are natural. Okay, and some have been fried. Some have been dipped in sugar. Some have been dipped in caramel. Some have, so it's still, you got to read that label on the back and see what kind of, some got a lot of salt in it, So anything that's natural is much better for you than anything that has been processed.
Yeah, definitely. Listen, while we're on that subject, I guess you want to chime in?
I wanted to interject something, and that is to say that although the government requires that the information be on the package, it's very tiny. It takes time to stand there and read.
Correct.
But not only that, when you get to be our age, you don't see all that well. So you need to make sure that if you're going to the grocery store, maybe you want to take one of those little magnifying glasses with you.
Yeah, that's true.
Because that'll help you be able to see what is in the food. It's really, as Dr. Felix said, it is really important not to just assume that something is good for you.
Oh, yeah.
Just because it's maybe, like she said, with the nuts. Natural peanuts are fine. But if those natural peanuts have been fried and salted and sweetened and covered, then all of a sudden you got a whole different product.
That's true.
So you need to be able to read the labels. And if you can't read the labels because the print is too small, then make sure that you're taking something with you. Your health depends on it.
That's true. That's very true.
Your life depends on it.
I agree. And I was having this conversation with one of my students last week, actually. We were talking about cereals. And when you look at the back of the label, they give you what is in the cereal as far as the sugars and calories and everything, but it's not the entire box. And it's also the measurement. A lot of people don't eat cereal by the portion of what they have up there on the label. And I think that's important to remember, too.
Yeah, portion size is very, very important. And everything that Dr. McBride, you saw the educator coming out.
She popped in, didn't she? And I love it. I love it, though. Our listeners need to hear that. So I'm glad she said that the way she said it.
I'm saying that to say your listeners have to educate themselves.
That's right.
That's very, very important because, it's like those commercials that are telling you about a different drug, and then they take about 16 seconds to tell you all of the side effects that drug has on it. So that's the same way with that small print that's on the back of, say, some sugar-coated peanuts.
Wow, that's a lot that goes into that. And speaking of commercials and all of that information they give you on it, what are some of the risk factors for developing heart disease? I think that's important for our listeners to know.
Absolutely. And I'm going to go into them. And like I say, all of this information can be found at the American Heart Foundation. Risk factors, they listed 13 on there, and they were age. Of course, as you get older, everything happens. Gender, family history, cholesterol, high blood pressure, physical inactivity. Back to you, Clay, that being active. Obesity, alcohol, drug abuse, like I said with the cocaine and methamphetamine, just to name a few. Diabetes, previous medical history. And if you've already had a heart attack,
yeah, understood.
That's already something that you need to be really cautious. Stress, and when I say stress, we're all under stress, but I'm talking about prolonged anxiety, depression type of stress, anger, hostility, that kind of stuff, keeping yourself in a sustained period like that. That can also be a risk factor. And last but not least is the dreaded word, smoking.
Oh, goodness. Oof.
And we're going to have another series from the health department on smoking, but I didn't want to underplay it on this one because smokers are twice as likely to suffer from heart attacks as are non-smokers and are more likely to die as a result.
Wow.
And what it is, it also has an increased risk of stroke in smokers. So what it is in the tobacco is the nicotine and the carbon monoxide that damages the cardiovascular system. And so there will be another speaker in another session who's going to talk about smoking succession, and the myths about if I stop smoking cigarettes and I start smoking electronic cigarettes, then I'm good.
Yeah,
So
that's a real good conversation to have, especially for all the youth that are listening right now who have watched these commercials and they think that it's a healthier choice. Let's fix that a little bit and give them some information they need.
So if you stay tuned to your show, the health department is going to, in collaboration with the Elizabeth City chapter of the Links Incorporated, is going to take care of that myth.
Yeah.
And now, Dr. Freda McBride, who I said is an educator, and just show that. We'll go into further detail about the behavior and preventative things that can be done concerning the risk factors that I have just listed.
Sure.
Dr. McBride.
Thank you, Dr. Felix. There is an abundance of reliable, available information for those of us who are not medical professionals to help us safeguard our hearts. One example is an article in the most recent AARP magazine under the heading Selfhelp, because we really are responsible for our own health. And when it comes to heart disease, we can't rely on doctors because all they can do is treat what you get.
Correct.
The best thing to do is not get it.
Got it.
That's the thing. That's the most important thing. Well, in this particular article, there is, it's called the 7 worst things you can do to your heart. And first of all, it points out the fact that you don't have to be a heart health fanatic to drastically reduce your risk of heart disease. You just have to do some sensible things. You know, you run into people sometimes where they just don't eat hardly anything because, you know, they're really so afraid of getting heart disease or some other illness. You don't have to be quite that drastic to be able to keep yourself healthy, because it is more than just the heart. It's keeping your entire body healthy, and that in the process you also keep your heart healthy. That's why the AARP and the American Heart Association are working together to give you simple fixes that you can do today to start lowering your heart disease risk.
Excuse me. One of the things that she's saying is when we're talking about the heart, we have to include the cardiovascular system.
Okay. So it's more that goes into it than just that heart. Yes, that's correct.
More than just the heart. That and that was what she was talking about.
The entire body when she said that.
The entire body, right.
So I'm going to start by talking a little bit about smoking. I'm not going to get into to everything that's going to be done on this next section that's coming. But the thing that we have to remember is that, first of all, smoking is really hard to quit. It's not easy.
Easier said than done. I've seen that. Yeah.
It is a whole lot easier said than done, and I can attest to it because I used to smoke. My husband and I both smoked. When we decided to quit, he just quit. Wow. And that's the kind of a personality he has. He just quit, just like that. He smoked a whole lot more than I did. And I was kind of a stop and start. So I think it's been about 15 years since I had a cigarette. Okay. But we started trying to quit probably 35 years ago.
Yes.
You know, so it's not really easy to stop. But this is a piece of information that I see that I wish I had at the time, so it might help people. If you are a smoker already, and if you were to stop smoking right now and never smoke another cigarette, within 2 years, your heart would be the same. Your risk of heart disease would be approximately the same as a person who never smoked.
Whoa. Wow. You talk about a blockbuster announcement. That's the first time I've heard that.
That's the first time I had heard it.
Unbelievable.
And the source she's reading that she got this read this information from is the latest article from the AARP, and they're doing this in conjunction with the American Heart Association. So this is really new information.
I think you're turning some of my listeners who may be smokers, they're changing their minds a little bit about that from hearing this for the first time probably ever.
Yeah, because in the past, I was led to believe that once you were a smoker, you continued to have that risk.
Correct.
It didn't change. But this research says that after 2 years, you're back at the starting point.
Wow.
So that really makes it worth an effort to stop. And I want to say something to the younger people because this is AARP. They're talking to our age,
yes, that's
not
right.
your age.
Our age. Yeah, I understand.
They're talking to people basically over 55, right? But I want to say this to the younger people. When we were growing up, we grew up in an era where smoking was considered to be okay.
Correct.
It was even considered to be cool.
Correct, that's right.
That's right. So we smoked because we thought we were being cool, you know. But young people are not growing up in that kind of atmosphere. They're being told from the very beginning
that's right.
that it's not good for them. So the best way to stop smoking is don't start.
At all, that's right.
So don't start. You know it's going to hurt your heart. Don't start. That's the best thing to do. So we want to stop smoking. That's the primary fix for, that was their number one fix. The second one, of course, has to do with exercise.
Sure.
Okay. So don't skip your walk. As Dr. Felix said, that you want to do at least 30 minutes a day or 150 minutes per week.
Correct.
Of exercise. Walking is good, but of course there are loads of other things that you can do. Any kind of exercise that gets you moving is good. Now, some of us that are older, we may be in a situation where we have gotten so sedentary that it's just hard for us to get up and go.
Yeah.
But we need to start somewhere.
Okay.
So if you really can't walk 30 minutes a day, then walk through the house 5 minutes, 5 times a day, 10 times a day. Build it up because the more you do it, the more you'll be able to do.
Got it.
So, but you can't, to just sit there and say, oh, I can't do 30 minutes a day. I can't walk for 30 minutes. No, don't do that. Yeah. Because you can walk for 30 minutes. You just have to build yourself up to the point where you can walk for 30 minutes.
Correct. And for the listeners who are listening saying, well, it's not the same as going to the gym. It is beneficial still. If you're not in the gym working out an hour, 2 hours a day, the walking can be just as beneficial.
And I just add that there are some people who can't walk because their knees,
Correct.
You got people who have knee problems.
Hip problems.
And hip problems. And so you can talk with your physician about other things that you can do, because there's like stationary bikes that you can have, and there are all kinds of physical therapy type equipment. So don't just stop there.
Yeah.
Go further.
Oh, yeah.
And because a lot of people are having knee issues.
That's right.
And then, if it rains one day, then you don't walk that day.
That's right.
So it'll get you.
You find a way. Yeah, I got you. Yes, you find a way not to get in there, and that's another thing for the youth too. As we're talking to some of the young listeners, also, you find reasons not to go into the gym or not to go out there and walk. Anything. I'm tired. It's raining outside. I have something else to do later. I don't have time to do it right now. It's the most difficult thing that I've heard from people when they go into the gym. For example, if they have a gym membership anywhere, is getting in the door. Once they get in the door, they're fine. But it's that get your clothes on, get in the car, and drive. That's the difficult part, is getting to the parking lot of the gym and then walking in, which is interesting.
Absolutely.
Sometimes it can even be hard when you don't have to do that, because I bought a treadmill and I don't use it nearly as much as I'm supposed to.
Look, it ends up being a place where you put your clothes on.
Yeah, it's a storage area. Yeah.
I don't actually do that, but it sits there sometimes, and I don't get to it every day. But anyway, their number 3 is, of course, has to do with eating. So one of the biggest health issues is that for people over 50 is that weight creep.
Yeah.
Like every 2 years, you're a couple of pounds more, and a couple of pounds more, and a couple of pounds more. And the only way to do that is to watch what we eat. A lot of times when we think of diets to lose weight, we think that we have to eat less.
Yes.
We don't have to eat less. We have to eat the right thing.
Got it.
So there are certain things that you need to try to cut out completely. And that doesn't mean that, you don't need to eat cookies. But just because you have a cookie, that doesn't mean that you stop and say, okay, I blew it. I'm just going to eat all the cookies I want. So what you want to do in that case is say, okay, I had my cookie, start over.
Okay.
And do it again.
Yeah.
Because all of us are human and all of us make mistakes. And sometimes we have to just build into the fact that I can have one cookie a week.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's just, I can have a cookie on Monday and I'll be good the rest of the week.
Not bad. Not bad. And it's an interesting way of changing your mindset.
Yes,
to that.
Absolutely.
So, instead of saying I can't ever have a cookie,
correct.
I can have a cookie on Monday. And maybe I can even have one on, say, Thursday. But I can't eat cookies every day.
And Clay, while we're talking about eating, Freda is talking about fixes. The other thing that you brought up was like portion size. I went to the Civil Rights Museum in Greensboro, and they have on the wall plate that when they
I got it.
when the students were doing the sit-in and stuff, and they have the extra plate, with the little sections in it.
Yeah.
And when you look at that little plate and you look at what they're bringing out to you now, it's a platter. People are eating in platters now.
Very
They're
much
not
so.
eating in plates.
Oh, my.
So that's another thing people need to think about as well in terms of eating. Go on with your fixes, Freda. I'm excited.
Well, here's another one that's probably might get me in trouble, but the AARP said this.
Okay, so we'll let it go. Okay.
In collaboration with the American Heart.
There you
In
go.
collaboration with the
Put
American
that
Heart.
disclaimer in there, yes.
Okay, well, I agree with it, but
Okay.
I don't want people jumping on me.
Sure.
Okay. If you eat dinner out of a box or a bag,
Oh, yeah.
you're more likely to consume enough fat to cause problems. So food that comes in boxes and bags are more likely to make you fat and sick than foods that you cook yourself.
I've heard that before, yeah.
And I know, I am the queen of not wanting to cook anymore. After my kids grew up and left home, I didn't even care about going in the kitchen. But if you're going to try to maybe eat out or pick up food and bring it in, there are places where you can actually get healthy food.
Okay.
But there's a lot of other places where you get inexpensive food that is full of fat, full of sugar. And of course, we all love sodas. Some of us try to use sugar-free sodas
Correct.
or diet sodas, but they're just as bad
They're just
for
as
you.
bad. They really
So
are.
what you need to do is eliminate soda, period. Or allow yourself one soda a week. I don't want you to feel deprived.
Right, that's correct.
One soda a week. You can. That's a whole lot better than I've seen people drink 3 or 4 a day.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
Oh, and I have a personal story I want to add into that as we're talking about sodas. This past December was my 4th year of having no soda in my life. I've actually taken away all the different types of soda. I haven't had a soda in 4 years, so that was good for me.
Bless you, great.
And the reason that happened was I had actually made that change to, okay, let me step away from the sugars because diabetes runs in my family. So I said, I don't want to get that. So let me go to these sweeteners. Let me try this. And what I was noticing was it was having an effect on my body, my stomach, and different areas that I was feeling different effects. And I went to the doctor, and they told me that, number one, when you deal with these sweeteners and these different types of drinks, your body just calls for sugar that much more. Your body's wanting it that much more. And it just had some different effects on me. And so what I said was I was just going to take soda out of my diet. And like I said, back in December was my 4-year anniversary of no soda in my life. And I noticed the change. And I'm pretty pleased with it to the point where I don't even want a soda. If I see it, I don't really need it. And that's how good I go to water or something to that effect, which works for me. And so I think that is important when you talk about the sodas and everything that comes with it. It's just like the cookie. I mean, you don't want to drink it every day.
And if you can do what you've done, that's the best thing.
Congratulations.
But
It is.
everybody
Thank you.
can't
Thank
do
you.
that.
Very much so.
At least they can't do it all at once.
And similar to the cigarette smoking,
Yeah,
it
they
is
may
difficult.
have to back down a little bit at a time and make an effort with the goal of completely eliminating it.
Correct.
But expect that it will take a little while because your body's got to get adjusted to not having that stuff.
Yeah, it does.
And we don't realize that we think we get addicted to cigarettes and drugs. We also get addicted to food.
We do.
And different kinds of food, especially. So we have to work on eliminating those addictions from our lives.
That's right.
That's one of the
And that goes back to what she was saying about diet soda. You think you can get off of regular soda and get on diet soda? What's in it?
Yeah, that's right.
Bring your
That's right.
magnifying glass and look at it. And you'll find.
Well, here's the thing. Unless you're a scientist, when you start looking at diet soda, you don't know what they're talking about because none of that stuff is in the ordinary
That's
language.
true. Those words, what are you saying? What are you talking? It's very confusing. It can be.
And that lets you know that that's probably not good for you
Very
if you
much
can't
so.
understand
I
what it
agree.
is.
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, and you're right. That's the thing. If you don't know what the word means, you don't want to put it in your body.
Ooh, ain't it the truth?
So
Wow.
that's very important there. So an overall healthy eating pattern emphasizes a variety of fruits and vegetables, whole grains, low-fat dairy products, skinless poultry, and fish, nuts and legumes, and non-tropical vegetable oil.
Okay.
Now, that little non-tropical part hurt me a little bit because I really do like coconut oil.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but so anyway.
And she's talking about beans and stuff, the legumes and
beans.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
I've
beans-
really made a switch there too. I mean, I've eaten so many different types of beans, pinto beans, black beans. That's part of my major diet, just because I wanted to increase my fiber intake too. So I know it helps me out with that. But all those are beneficial, I'm sure.
You remember back in the 50s when they had the they were talking about the nuclear war and they built these things underground. You know, they put beans and all of that stuff in there. You know, that was going to help you survive. So beans are always good to have.
Yeah, definitely.
This is true. So then the other thing is that you need to have vegetables with every single meal,
Interesting.
including breakfast.
Wow.
This is the AARP
It
and the
is.
American Heart Association.
And this is something I do not do. So let's expand upon that.
I don't either.
I
I don't have vegetables with my breakfast. I do have vegetables with every other meal. But they recommend or they indicate that one of the things you can do is chop up some Brussels sprouts chop up Brussels sprouts and cook them with your scrambled eggs. I'm going to try that.
Okay.
I'm going to try that and
Yeah.
see what that's like. I haven't tried it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So what do they say about like putting onions and stuff in there? Those are vegetables.
Does that count? I mean,
does that-
I was wondering.
Yeah,
bell
those are vegetables.
peppers
They
and
do.
things
They do.
Yeah,
like
all
that.
of those are vegetables. So
Yeah.
if you're making an omelet or scramble them, scramble with that. Either way, you're getting vegetables. So you want vegetables with every meal. So you want to try to eat servings of fruit and vegetables with every meal, and you want to increase the amount of fruit and vegetables that you eat, especially opposed to things that are sugar and wheat.
Okay.
So you want to decrease those kinds of things.
Yeah.
And this is my little piece. This is not in the magazine, but I think one of the most unhealthy things you can eat is white bread, because there's really no nutritional value in white bread.
Sure. Okay.
And it's just
Well, it's been bleached.
yeah.
So would you say a good substitute for that is when you go to your 100% whole wheats or your what is, because I know people are going to eat bread, so what should they choose as opposed to the white bread?
If you're going to eat bread, it should be whole wheat.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So your whole wheats are much better for you.
And you have to still read what's
Yeah, definitely.
on
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
What's in it.
Yeah, because just because it says whole wheat, they're not all the same.
Very true.
Yeah.
Very true.
And if you go to that brown bread section in the store, it's a whole wall.
It really
full
is.
of them.
It can. You could stay there for half an hour
Right.
just going through all the different types of different breads. How many
Absolutely.
calories are in each slice, and is it full wheat? It's a lot of work, but again, you're doing it for your health. You're doing it for your body, isn't
Right.
it? It's important to put that time in. Well, there's nothing
Right.
wrong
That's
with that.
right.
You should want to put that time in.
And since she said the brown bread, not all brown bread is whole wheat.
No, it's
Understood.
not.
That's right. That's right.
So you can't just look and say this is brown, so this is what I'll eat. No, yeah, brown is good. Yeah, but
yeah.
it has to be the right brown.
That's correct, and it's better than white. Yes,
It has
that's
to be
right.
the right brown.
These are great fixes.
They really are. They really are.
Okay, so the other thing is that we need to reduce the stress in our lives. You've talked about that. Stress is a part of your life. There's not any way to get away from it. It's going to be there. What matters is how you handle it. And in many cases, people can get really upset about things that I'm pretty sure you've run across people that seem to get upset about everything.
Yeah.
It's just everything, and you're trying to pull back because you don't want to take on any of that, right? Well, that's one of the things you want to do is try to pull away from those people that are trying to bring their stress into your life. But the stress is there. So how do you get rid of it? You can get rid of it by exercising. So you need to exercise anyway. So when you go out and you go walk on the treadmill for an hour, you feel so much better. The stress is easing away. The other thing is that things like meditation and yoga, Tai Chi, just going for a walk in the woods, or if you don't have any woods, down the street. Taking a good walk, getting into a creative hobby.
Sure.
Now, that's one of the things that I've done lately, and I didn't do it to relieve stress, but after I read this, I started to think about it, and I realized that I started painting. When I retired, I needed something to do. I started painting, and I realized that I get almost anything can go on around me when I'm painting, and I'm just into the painting.
Yeah.
So I can't be getting stressed if I'm absorbed in my colors.
Wow.
Because that's basically what I call it, playing with colors, because I'm not a painter.
Sure.
But finding something to do that absorbs your mind and lets you push all that other stuff away. There's a saying that don't sweat the small stuff, and it's all small stuff.
I like it.
So if you think about it that way, when something comes up that stresses you, the first thing you need to decide is, what can I do about it?
Correct.
And if the answer is nothing, then move on.
Yeah.
Because you're just going to sit there and make yourself ill by being stressed. And the last thing that that the article mentioned was over drinking, consumption of alcohol. Now, they point out that there is some evidence that a little bit of that alcohol in moderation is probably good for the heart.
Okay.
But what's moderation?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and this is going to be interesting because I've always heard a little glass of red wine every day is helpful. I don't know if that's true, so I want you to expound upon this.
Well, that's what they do say. They say that modest drinks, it turns out to be one drink, but they don't say what kind, whether it's liquor or wine or
Sure.
what.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that modest means one drink per day for women and 2 drinks for men.
2. Okay.
So I guess because men have more muscle or something.
Maybe.
I don't see
that's
why
interesting.
I
think
don't see why they should be able to drink more than
I
us.
agree. I agree.
But I will attest to the fact that if I have a glass of wine before I go to bed, I will sleep like a baby.
Wow. Really now? Because it helps with the relaxation and getting you to the point where you can sleep well?
It does. Well, if I have a glass of wine and I'm not going to bed, I'm still going to want to go to sleep.
But that's good. I mean, that's interesting because I've always heard that for years and years, and I just never understood how alcohol can assist your heart. It never made sense. Yeah.
Well, you think about it, it relaxes you. Mm-hmm. So that means that it's relaxing the blood vessels, it's relaxing the heart, it's relaxing your mind. Yeah. But you don't want to get too relaxed because then your heart's got to work too fast. Correct. So
one thing I worry about, and this is something that I'll talk more about when I talk about my time when I was a basketball player here at ECSU, is the fact that my heartbeat per minute seems like as years go on, it gets lower naturally. It just seems like I wish I could have checked it back then and then compared it to just checking it now, and I'm sure it will be a little bit less. And when I go into workout, it's one of the things that I want to do is get my heartbeat up, 160, 170, 180 for a period of time. And is that just something that naturally happens, or is it if you continue on with exercise, it'll stay the way it was? I'm thinking it's just age because I can't have the same heart rate I had 20 years ago.
Oh, no. And on the machines, when you go into the gym, they tell you, if you look up at the top, most of them will tell you.
It does, yeah.
Yeah. And I just wanted to go back to what you were saying about alcohol to just give you some support on that.
Yeah.
The American Heart Foundation says small amount of regular alcohol consumption, 1/2 to 1 drink per day, not stating what kind, for women and 1 to 2 drinks per day for men can reduce risk of heart disease.
I can't believe
However,
it.
drinking an average of more than 1 drink a day for women or more than 2 drinks a day for men increases the risk of heart disease and stroke because of the effect on blood pressure, weight, and levels of triglycerides.
Interesting.
Binge drinking is
it's just not a good thing.
No.
Very interesting news. I mean, this has been really informative for our listeners to hear a lot of things that I'm sure they've never heard before. And I'm thinking it'll help out a lot of you listeners, young and older, who can help out. And one thing I did want to also speak on, and you were talking about this as far as your health history, heart disease. Is there any type of hereditary components to heart disease? If my mother had it or if my uncle had it, is it something that I need to focus on myself? I mean, everybody has a different lifestyle, so I didn't know if it was something that I need to focus on if people close in my family have had it before too.
Absolutely. I mean, that just goes without saying. It's just like diabetes and what you were speaking of. It's the same thing. You cannot do anything about your family tree and what is coming down in your family tree.
Right.
The only thing you can do is the preventive things and the fixes that she's talked about. Because if you know that you had a family history, and most, like my family, there's no cancer. I can go back. The cancer is just not in my family.
Sure.
But stroke, high blood pressure, heart disease, and diabetes.
Wow. Interesting. So it's something to keep an eye on if you know it runs in the family.
In fact, I did, the genealogy.
Yes.
And where you had to swab your, and send it in.
Sure.
I sent it in to the professor at Harvard. And it showed that from my DNA, I had a 55% chance of becoming obese.
Wow. Wow.
Now, that's what just me being born.
Yeah. Interesting.
But the other thing you have to also look at is, like in my family, people just simply die of old age. We live a long time. My grandmother lived to be 102, and she didn't have really any particular disease.
Sure.
I think she died from inactivity. After she got so old, my aunts wouldn't let her do anything. And that's another thing. If you have older people in your family, don't make them sit around and do nothing.
Yeah.
They need to get up and move. So if they, she probably would have lived to be 110 if they had let her move.
Well, it's easy for a young person to say, great grandma or grandma, you've done all the work you need to do. Just stay in the house and sit down and look at TV. No, don't let them sit, because you can arthritis and you can lose the use of their limbs. If they want to walk, let them walk. If they want to work out inside the house, let them work out. I think that's very important, especially for the older people.
Yeah.
I've seen my aunts, my grandmother get ready to get up and go get a glass of water, and they wouldn't let her go. You sit down, I'll bring it to you. And I see the same thing happening to some extent with my mother. My mother is 95, and my sister. I'm the only one that doesn't live at home, or at least close by home.
Sure.
And when I go there, I'll say to them, Don't do that. Let her go. Let her go. Let her go do it.
Yeah.
Because anytime she gets ready to do something, they want to do it for her.
That's right.
But you don't want to do that. Let them do what they can do. Do for them what they can't do.
That's right.
That's
right.
That's the best way to keep them with you longer. You love them. That's why you want to do it. You want to keep them with you. So you keep them with you longer by letting them do.
Wow.
And but what I was getting to is the fact that nobody in my mother's generation had diabetes. My mother doesn't have it. The siblings that she has that are still alive, they don't have it. None of the siblings that have passed away ever had it. We never had any history of diabetes. But in my generation, almost everybody has it. And I think that's lifestyle.
Yeah, it is.
It's lifestyle.
That's
And
lifestyle.
That's what I wanted to get back to say.
Okay.
That even though you might have it in your DNA, if you do the things that she said, smoking, don't start it.
Yeah.
Those fixes that she just mentioned, then you can work with your family history. But it's important to know your family history so you'll know what you're working up against. So you have to do that the rest of your life.
Outstanding.
But you can beat it, because my aunt lived 112 years old.
What a blessing.
And she got the same DNA
What
as
a
I got.
blessing. I hope that I can get there. That will be a beautiful, beautiful thing. Listen, listeners, there's a lot of information to digest, and we thank you that you were listening to everything. We're going to provide this information on our Facebook page, and we're going to continue the conversation on our Facebook page also. Thank you both for providing this information. Very important for our listeners to know. Is there anything else that, as we close this out, that we want to say to the listeners to give them a little bit of information about how they can make a change now to reduce their risk of getting heart disease?
The basic thing is to decide within your inner self that you are going to make a change and stick to it. That's not easy, but that's something that's necessary if you do not want to die from heart disease.
Definitely.
And of course, don't give up. Because if you make a decision to make a change, you might be like my husband with the smoking, and you can do it all at once. But then again, you might be like me, and it takes a while. But just because you decide, I don't need to eat white bread, and all of a sudden it's there, and you just have to have it, and you eat it, that doesn't mean you've got to eat it again.
That's right.
Still go back to your initial decision not to do it. So make a decision about what it is that you want to do to improve your health, and do everything in your power to stick to it. But when you fall off the wagon, so to speak, just jump up and hop back on.
Absolutely.
Keep going, because eventually you will do like me and get to the point that you completely stop. It took me a while to get completely stopped, because I would be on and off. But eventually, now, it's like I said, it's been over 15 years. But we can all do what we need to do.
Yeah.
We just have to accept that sometimes we can't do it all at once.
That's right. That's right.
Final word, Clay, is that I attended I don't smoke, I never have, but I attended a smoking cessation class at Mayo Clinic. And one thing that I realized It's just what she said. There is no harm in failure. The only harm is to fail the last time you try. So if you get off the bandwagon, then you need to get back up and get on it again and keep doing that until you do accomplish what you need to accomplish concerning your health.
I like it. Dr. Felix, Dr. McBride, thank you so much for this information, and I can't wait to have you back on my show for some more informative conversation for our listeners. Thank you all so much.
Thank you so much.